I keep it inside of me. Yeah, I keep it inside. It's killing the man in me. Yeah, it's killing the man. Keep it inside, I keep it inside of me. Yeah, I keep it.
Welcome to yet another episode of the Crisis of Manhood podcast with me, your host, Peter Mkuka. Well, in today's world where we are raised to be providers as men, what happens when you lose that only source of income as a man? And so today we'll be looking at dealing with joblessness, and to help me unpack this conversation, I'm joined by none other than Muyaloka David. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, and I'm glad to be here. And we hope to have a very wonderful discussion around that subject.
Absolutely. Maybe before we go deep into our conversation, just introduce yourself to the viewers.
My name is Muyaloka David, and I'm very passionate about communities. I've run several number of projects that are community-based. Projects such as I've run projects that empower women in terms of digital financial services, the youths as well, the boys as well as the communities around Zambia. And in my line of career, I'm very passionate about working with the communities. I think this stems from church environments, as well as also just my profession. Like, I love communities and I love to work with communities. I love to empower people. I love to see people thrive. You know, today in this world, I think we realize that, especially in our African setup, our communities are so marginalized. And for me, I look forward to communities that can be empowered economically, physically, emotionally, and also environmentally. But basically, I think I just love working with the community just to see them thrive, as well as especially in rural areas, so that we can have an equal state of affair, both in the rural sectors and also in the urban sector. So community development is something that I'm passionate about. Yes.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's very interesting that one of the things that, since here we're focusing on the men, one of the things that we don't really talk about is joblessness. And I'm glad that we are having this conversation, especially for men. I think for me, my own personal experience, a few years ago, I think I really struggled with employment. There was a time that I was not in employment for quite some time. I think maybe a year plus. And it was the first time for me as an adult, staying without a job for that long. And so, the first few months, you're taking it easy, but then after some time, you start realizing that it's taking a toll on you, because now, you're not able to bring food on the table as you used to be.
Yes.
You used to do, especially for those that are married, like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know that I was getting depressed. So, like basic things, and you are used to, like, when something is not there in the home, you just rush and buy and bring. But then now if something is not there, you have to, like, babe, we don't have salt in the house. Sure, man. So, and I know there are a lot of men out there who are really struggling to cope with, providing, because I see that men actually get to a place where they feel like their worth is attached to what they're able to provide at the table. Yes. Did you ever have that experience personally?
Well, very interesting. Go, Peter. I'm actually very surprised that you talked about you are only jobless for 1 year. Yeah. Like, really, you are complaining.
It felt like 10 years.
Oh my goodness. So some of us actually have experienced that as well. And I will tell you one thing. I've experienced joblessness for even more than what you did. I think I would tell you even 5 years or so. Yeah. And it's something very painful, like you have said. Maybe let me start with this background. As a man, you understand that, we'll go back, I think, from the context of the Bible. You understand that a man, by man I mean male, has been given actually that mandate to provide, a man is supposed to provide, and just even society expects that a man should actually provide. And then how do you provide? You provide by going out there to hustle, to just work and see yourself get a little bit of resources and all that. But there are so many things that one can do. You can do business, you can also venture yourself into employment and other things. But here we're talking about joblessness. Yeah. And when it comes to joblessness, the mandate of every man is that we should actually work for us to have whatever resources we should have. But of course, we live now in a society where, for example, I come also from an academic background. You go to university. In fact, the first thing that you do, even when a child is growing up, the first thing they do is go to school. You know how parents used to say, no, go to school. That's uzaenda ku school, uzakaferuka. You know, now by that we mean if you don't go to school, you actually fail to do anything in life. And because of that, we've been shaped with this culture where we think every time we go to school, we need to find a job. And unfortunately, these days, life is quite different. You know, when our parents were growing up in the 80s, 70s, and all that, when they go to school, it was easy for them to find jobs. But for us now, the market has saturated with so many graduates and everything else. But now, how do you just navigate around joblessness? Because it's like there's so many human resources around and then there are less jobs. So then how do you cope with that? So you see, I've been in that situation before. You know, when I graduated from the University of Zambia, it was an issue where you think, and sometimes some lecturers will tell you, the moment you finish with this course, people will be fighting for you. You know, out there, I know Bank of Zambia will be fighting for you, whatever organizations will be fighting for you. But what you learn there and what you are taught is quite different from what you experience or what you find in society. You understand? And so now, when you come in society, you find that there are no jobs. And now, as a man, because when you're a man, like I mentioned earlier, I think this thing has just been there from the onset of life and even from creation. You are born to provide. And so because of that, you find yourself in a situation where you complete school, you try to look for a job, and then there are no jobs around. Of course, maybe 1-2 weeks, the pressure won't be as much. But of course, when you begin to grow from a boy into a man, that is where now the pressure comes through. Now, let me explain this further. If you are married, you expect your wife to be provided for, your children to be provided for, and your wife and children will be looking up to you. And you know, I always tell people that as a man, you have no choice but to go out there and hustle, to go out there and work. But you find yourself in a situation, and as a man, you can't just sit and say, maybe today I'll just sit and I'll not do anything. Your wife is looking up to you, your children are looking up to you. That is when you are married. But when you're not married also, as a man also, you can't begin to live a life of being comfortable. You sit at home and say, okay, fine, let's say you are being kept by your parents or even your siblings or whoever is keeping you. You can't also just sit and say, fine, I think I will just sit here, because people begin to look up to you. You know, when you reach a certain age, people begin to look up to you. Now, even if you don't have a family, it includes your siblings, your mothers, or your parents, or whoever, they begin to look up to you, even society itself actually. So it now becomes so difficult because you have these pressures around where society expects you to provide, and then you don't have. How do you navigate around that? And that is where now the problem is. I have been there before. I have been there before, and I think my friends, those who are very close to me, understand issues that I've gone through, joblessness. But I will tell you one thing, Peter. In my time of being jobless, of course, I've had this urge to think, I have to provide for my mother, I have to provide for my parents, I have to provide for even the relationship, as a man also, if you're in a relationship, you're expected to provide for your girlfriend and also for your partner, So there is that pressure that comes through. So in my experience, I think what really helped me is the fact that I had this edge in me that the pressures around that I needed to provide for my family, I needed to provide for myself as well. And so being jobless was very painful. It was very painful. I'll tell you that every time you keep on praying and praying that something would come up, because remember I mentioned when you graduate, your expectations are that you should get a job.
Yeah.
But now there's no job. You try to push in applications. This company that come, you try to speak with people.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the application process.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that really troubled me is the fact that you're sending applications.
Yes.
Right? You're seeing these jobs being advertised.
Yes.
You're sending in your applications and you're not getting any response. And that just takes a toll on you as a person, right?
Yes. And
you start thinking is there something wrong with my CV?
Exactly. Where now you even begin giving people your CV and say, no, CV, check my CV. Like, is my CV okay or something? Yeah. But I think one thing I'll tell you, it actually takes a lot to just put things together and to accept that, look, maybe this is not my time and all that. And people keep on telling you, no, your time will come. And then you keep on wondering to say, when is my time going to come? So that process of application, you bounce in applications here and there and nothing comes up. That is actually what makes you strong about it. And let me go back to what I was explaining. So how did I navigate through issues of joblessness? So for me, it was an issue where I've tried to apply here, I've tried to apply there are no jobs, applications are just coming back without any responses, or sometimes they tell you, we regret to inform you, we can't give you a job. And so for me, one thing I did was never just to sit down and just say, okay, fine, this is it. So I decided to venture into business. And I think most of the people that know me will understand that having, people think when you have degrees and you have all these papers, you can't venture into anything else except white-collar jobs. Yeah. So for me, what helped me was the fact that, and by the way, not everyone who ventures into business is not schooled or hasn't been to school. Yeah. So sometimes circumstances would make you to venture into business simply because you can't find what we call the white-collar jobs, the joblessness that we are talking about right now. So for me, what I ventured into was business. I started the supply business where I became a supplier, and that I think helped me for quite some time. And then I also entered into farming business. I was farming a lot of tomatoes, chickens, and as well as cabbages and other crops. From there, an idea actually was born to also do restaurants. So I also opened a restaurant business called Food Village. Now the idea there was for me to create jobs for others. I reached a point where joblessness gave me this idea to begin to create jobs for others, because I was in a situation where I am jobless and I know how it feels to be jobless. So I looked at this situation and thought, why can't I be the one to create jobs for others? So I ventured into businesses, and businesses now gave me the jobs. And I would say I became jobless. So, I had a job. Yeah. So it was an issue where me being jobless gave me all these ideas and ventured into business.
Before you proceed, have you heard of this saying? It's a Nyanja saying. Yeah. It says, "Mavuda punzisa."
Exactly. I think that was the case with me. Yeah.
Because of those situations, you become innovative.
Yes.
Yes. Interesting.
Yeah. So that is what now made me more innovative. But I was actually very lucky. While doing that, you understand that I eventually got a job where I began to collect data. So remember I told you I come from a background of project management. So I began to collect data as a data collector or enumerator. So I collected data where I was paid almost nothing. That job is the one that opened all ideas and the job I'm currently doing. And I think I mentioned I run projects now. I'm a project manager for different organizations. So that same job actually opened doors for me, but I haven't stopped doing the business that, you remember the time I was jobless, like I mentioned, I ventured into business, but that has not stopped. And because of me being project manager, I ran quite a number of projects like for organizations like the UN, African Center for Economic Transformation. I was project manager. Now I'm saying this because I want you to see how I've transitioned from being jobless to now what I would say a co-owner of a company that now we have actually developed. So from being jobless, and I'll tell you this, maybe for people may not know, I have not really, my whole career, I have not really worked for organizations.
Full-time
Yeah, exactly. Full-time job. I think my whole career, I've never done that. And actually people wonder how I survive. So it's because of being jobless that, remember those businesses I talked about. Yeah. Then from being project manager and running projects, I now came up with an idea with colleagues where I said, look, we have all this talent. I run projects successfully. I've been to school and I know now how organizations are run. Why can't we open our own organization? So now, because of being jobless, it now made us to open or find an organization, a consulting organization. I'll not mention it for now, yeah. So we do consulting, and because of being jobless, I think we now ventured into that. All ideas came up, and now I think now we are running an upcoming organization now that I think is going to thrive in Zambia in terms of consultancy and all that. So that is how I navigated around joblessness. So it was the idea where you are jobless and you need to provide. Yeah. I need to provide for the people around. I need to provide for my family. I need to provide for myself. So you just don't sit to begin blaming government, to begin blaming relatives, to begin blaming friends that they are not helpful. You know, being a man, Peter, I'll tell you this. You know, people always say, no one is coming to save you. That saying is very true. No one. Trust me, no one will come and tell you, oh, you are seated there, you're jobless. Oh, come and get the job. No, as a man, you need to actually go out there, find something to do. Let me tell you, even if it means you going somewhere to just ask for something to do, that's where it starts from. Yeah. So you can't, as a man, sit down comfortably and say, I am jobless. And by the way, this is now the mentality of young people around. Yeah. Youths, especially males, and this so much, I think our emphasis is on the men and the male. Yeah. Because for a woman, really, these days society, of course, women are hustling here and there, but for a man, you have no option. So you can't just sit. So it has to take you now to begin looking around. So you don't just sit, you now need to go around to ask people, ask friends, what is it exactly that I can do? Can I help in one or two things so that I can just get something for a living? And it is in very small things. That is where now you begin to get some of these big jobs and big gigs and find something to do to provide for your family. So it all starts from very humble beginnings to flourish and to reach a certain point where the title of being jobless just disappears. Otherwise, it's been a journey for me. I have experienced that, but for now, I think that has gone away. Of course, we are trying to build our own things, but I think that is where it starts from, and it eventually ends as a man when you keep pushing.
Yeah, I think let's talk a little bit more about starting small.
Yes.
I want us to talk about what you just mentioned earlier on concerning starting small. I feel like for this young generation, young men currently, this is personal.
Okay.
I feel like, and personal observation, I feel
Yes.
like young people today want, I don't know, like fast
life.
Yes, like you want success there and then. I like to talk to, when I'm talking to young people, I like to tell them that sometimes, like, just basing it on your example where you got a job that was not paying you so much. And I think that's something that helps when you're trying to build something bigger. You start small, you get a small gig that just helps you to just get the experience that you need and help you to build on that. What would be your comment on that?
Well, Peter, I'll tell you that society and environments teach us a lot, and I think this is something I would want to really emphasize. I always say, unless you are dealing with illegal activities or you are a thief or something, then you would want to get rich quickly. Now, society teaches us about life. Let me give you an example. When a baby is born, what happens? They go through stages. They have to crawl, they have to stand, they have to run, and then they have to do certain things. That's for human beings. Trees, look at trees. There is no way you can plant a tree today and then tomorrow you come back and then the tree is all grown and then you can get fruits from there. And I actually go to the gym. I love to exercise. That also teaches me a lesson. You can't grow muscles in one day. It takes you 6 months of consistency. Now, going back to what you mentioned, it's the same principle even with life and starting small and being jobless. You can't just today begin a business, for example, or you can't just today be the Dangote, you can't just today be the managing director for a particular organization. You need to be very patient with life. Being jobless requires you to be patient. And when I mean patience, it requires you to have a lot of patience. This simply means that you need to begin growing yourself. If it's your career, begin taking baby steps. Now, by baby steps, it simply means get a small job, And this is one thing I've also seen with young people these days. You have a degree or you have a diploma. You want to get a very big job. Of course, there are others that have been lucky. There are others that have been lucky that from university off, they are director or they are managers and all that. But we should understand that life is not a one size fits it all. We all have different paths. And most of our paths begin from very humble beginnings. And so we have to be very patient. That simply means that you can have a degree. At that particular point, you can have any papers that you have or whatever you are doing. Now, let me not emphasize so much on academics and papers. Even if you don't have papers, you can start very small with very small jobs, and then you begin to grow and climb the ladders. Remember the examples I just gave you of a tree, a baby, and building muscles and everything else. All those take time. It's one day at a time. So young people must understand that we can't just get there. We need to start from the bottom and we begin rising slowly in ranks. Now, rising slowly means that as you are doing a particular job, you must also begin to self-develop. You begin investing in yourself, in your skills, for example. There are so many skills today. There are skills like maybe if you are a data analyst, you can begin to develop skills in that area. And whatever career you are in, you must begin scaling up slowly. You just don't sit here and say, I have all these papers, because the world is now being innovative. Everyone is innovating. So you need now to begin to develop yourself, improve your life, and that is what keeps you at the top. That is what now you get elevated, takes you to the top and all that. So you can't just sit and say, I'm comfortable in this area. You now need to begin investing in yourself. And one thing also I'll mention is that there are so many things. For example, young people today, you will find that if I studied a course, let's say I'm a nurse or a doctor or whatever career you are on, the problem also that I have seen is people don't want to venture into other areas. I know of a doctor today, successful doctor. She does everything that she's very successful in terms. She's even employed, but what does she do? She's actually a baker.
Wow.
She bakes. Now, I also know of certain men, like this person studied, they did, I think, environmental science and biology and these other things, but when you look at their career today, they own a garage. So sometimes it's not about what you have studied. Sometimes it could be what are your interests, for example. And the mistake sometimes that we make is to want to do certain things in line with our career. Of course, we studied, for example, a particular program, and that is what we wanted to do. But life sometimes takes us in situations where you fail to venture into your career path, and then you divert. I have so many friends actually that studied economics, and then this person is a marketeer. They studied economics, and then this person is a driver. They have owned so many fleets of vehicles and everything else. So life sometimes may not bring us the things that we wished for. Circumstances sometimes shape us into different paths that we can take. And from those paths, we now begin to venture into from small activities, so small endeavors into medium endeavors, and now it takes us into big endeavors where we can grow and become big. And I think starting small, we always say never despise humble beginnings. They are very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And just borrowing from what you're saying, life is not a straight line.
No, it's
I think
not.
that's something that young people
It's not.
it takes you this way, it turns and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people who started out as a computer enthusiast, and I found myself in working in communities and doing project management. So,
Really?
yeah, I mean, there was a time in my life that I told myself I was going to be this guy like Mark Zuckerberg in the corner, wearing a t-shirt and jeans, on a computer, that kind of a person. But today I'm doing things that are totally different.
Of course.
So life is not a straight line, and I think everyone has to understand that.
Yes.
But you bring out such very important aspects, and one of the things that I've picked from your comment is that number one, someone has to be patient.
Very
Patience
patient.
is very
Very
important.
much.
And also just being able to, I think also because of the life today that we have, fast internet, fast communication, so everything is fast paced, and you want the money to come in fast, but humble beginnings very, very important.
Very important.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of young men out there who are really struggling. I think let's now focus more on the mental aspect. There are people who are dealing with joblessness, and they're really struggling with probably depressed and all that. What would be your words to such kind of people?
Well, remember very well, like I mentioned earlier, when you are a man, society expects a lot from you. And because society is expecting a lot from you, that affects you mentally, And by the way, this is not even a joke. I'm seeing things on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms. Just I think this morning, or maybe I don't know if it's yesterday, I was on TikTok. I was watching, and then I came across this video of a lady who was saying, if you're a man and then you don't have any money, stay away from me. Stay away from me. Like what is a broke man doing in my inbox? That kind of a thing. Yeah. So while that sometimes may look like a joke, society is actually now changing into that state. And people are shunning away from relationships, they are shunning away from society because of that mental stress that is there because they can't provide. They don't have the money. But, yesterday I was also listening to a sermon by a certain pastor at church who said, never write off anyone who is alive. Never write them off. But anyway, let's go back to issues of mental and all that. But there's a point that I was trying to drive there. I hope I'll mention it later.
Let's have it now.
Yeah, we can have it now. Yeah, so the point there is never write off anyone who is alive. Now, what that simply means is that you know how society now is, especially for women. And by the way, this mental stress for men in terms of being joblessness and not providing, sometimes, and I mean sometimes, comes from external pressure. By external pressure, like I mentioned, it could be society. What does society expect me to do? What does my family expect me to do? And most importantly, what does a woman I love or what does someone I want to pursue expect me to do? And so because of that, you have this mental stress in you that I can't provide. And when I mention never write off anyone who is alive, it simply means that every one of us has the potential to provide. Sometimes it could be because life has not just reached us, our time has not yet just come, and we are pushing, we are trying. And so for as long as you are alive, you have that opportunity to push, and no matter what mental stress you may be going through, for as long as you are alive, I want to assure you that you can always push life, things can always happen. And I will tell you, mental stress when you can't provide is real. A lot of men in marriage, a lot of men who are single, they go through a lot. I have friends who are married myself. Sometimes their wives would not even know what the husband is going through. I have quite a number of friends, even myself. Sometimes I go through mental stress when I'm broke. Like you get so stressed. And I just want to encourage anyone going through this. Being stressed is normal because as a man, and no one should ever feel less of themselves. Not having money and stress is normal. Because if you are normal and you are a man, if you don't have money, you should get worried. And sometimes it puts you under very, very intense pressure and it begins to affect you mentally. And I just want to say, stay calm. Stay calm. I know society expects that you should provide. People around you expect that you should provide, but we must stay calm. Mental stress is very real. A lot of people are going through stress because of not being able to provide or being broke, but we can always navigate that around. And when a man is going through such moments, let's be kind to one another. Let's be kind to one another as fellow men and as also women. Like I mentioned, a lot of men actually, I'm telling you this through experience, one, and also through what others go through. A lot of men go through stress, sometimes because of relationships, if you are married, sometimes because of your own partner, you understand, but also sometimes because your family will begin to say, Ndio Mamuna, you're a man, you should provide. Of course, yes, I know and I'm expected to provide, but sometimes things can just be so bad. And so, let's be kind to one another. And sometimes the things that we say may get to us. For example, your friends are out there doing things, you're just seated here. Such things get to you, they get to stress you, and sometimes they lead to suicide. And so I just want to say, we should be kind to one another. And for me, I think, instead of condemning, we should instead encourage one another, that we can do it. And I think as men, we should always be there for each other. Because men, we understand what we go through. We understand the mental stress and everything else. When you see your fellow man struggling, pat them on the back. My brother, you can do it. And I think this is what we need. Other than situations where you now need to begin laugh at your fellow man, because truthfully, I always say no normal man would laugh at his fellow man for the stress, the mental stress they go through because of being broke. Because at some point, that can flip and turn. You can actually be on the other side of the coin. Or maybe you have been there before. So the point that I'm just trying to stress here is that we must be kind to one another to reduce mental stress. And for anyone who is going through such, believe you me, stop stressing too much and never stop trying. And if you need even help to talk to someone, and this is why this organization is here. You can always talk to organizations like Peter. I'm sure anyone can feel free to come and speak with you about such issues. Absolutely. And by the one thing also people don't know, on the other side, I'm also a professional counselor. I'm also a professional counselor where I speak about real issues of life. So sometimes it's important to just confide in another man and let them understand what you're going through. Otherwise,
talking really helps. Like when you have something heavy on your chest and you speak to someone, it really helps.
Yes.
So that's something that a lot of men actually really struggle to do.
Of course.
I think for some of those that have had conversations with, I think it's fear of when you share and then someone shares your story,
being
somebody else
exposed
and all that. There's one thing, I don't know whether it's true or not, but there's some men who have complained about being disrespected. Those that are married, being disrespected.
We've heard about such
but I think
things.
also it comes from, first of all, maybe women need to be more emotionally intelligent.
Yes.
Because when someone is in that state, I think they're vulnerable. So you say something, without meaning to harm the person, and then because they're sensitive in that moment, they feel like, oh, she's disrespecting me because now I don't have a job.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right. Sometimes a woman would not really mean to. Now I'm talking about those that are married. Yeah. A woman sometimes would not really mean to disrespect you. But I'll tell you this: it's just in us men. Now, when I mean it's us, it's in us men. Of course, I know there are men there who are comfortable with being fed. And I don't think such person should be called a man. Like I mentioned, you are called from the time you are born as a man, you are called to provide. And so if you are comfortable by being provided for, then now we should make you, I think we should check your mental state. Now, it's in us men. Sometimes even a woman or even, sometimes when you're jobless and when you're broke, even a dog can be barking here, and then you may accuse a dog to say it's doing that because even your woman can just be singing, or your wife would be singing a song in the house, for example. And now because you are jobless, and then because you are broke, you'd think maybe she's doing masetting, she's trying to tease you. Or even when you walk around, even when you see a billboard that is saying, do you want money? Everything around you when you're broke and jobless looks like this is talking about me. So it's normal like that to feel like that as a man. So really, what causes that is it's in you to provide, and when you can't, you become uncomfortable. So like I mentioned earlier on, we must be very kind to one another. We must be very kind.
I think we lack those spaces, like spaces for men where we can talk about these things. Where we can be like just a supportive environment, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like somebody said, and I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Like when you look at the smallest groups in the church, it's a group of men. When you talk of the men's gathering, you see 4 or 5 people who come. When you talk about women's gathering, you see everyone is there. I think that's one of the challenges that we have as men, I think.
Yeah, and I think just to comment on that, Peter, we should begin to create an environment where we can begin to have honest conversations as men. Now, I belong to a group of men, I have male friends and all that. Do you know that it's quite difficult to blend in sometimes, and sometimes we have very fake conversations in these groups of ours as friendships and everything else, because your friend is doing so well, and so you want to fit in as well. And so we begin to have those fake conversations. We begin to talk about audio money. I call it audio money, where you're just talking about I have money and then you don't have the money actually in the pocket. So I think we must begin to have very honest conversations as men. It's high time that when we meet, we should vent. Let's allow to express ourselves freely, minus being intimidated or minus feeling these guys are going to look down on me. And I think this is now the culture that we must begin to develop. We must begin to openly meet and say, look, things are not okay at home. Things are not okay at home. I have a friend of mine that I once taught that. Yeah, I once taught that. I think some few years ago, things were so bad, and I was very open enough with them to tell them things are not okay at home. Well, they gave me some money, but the next time I heard my stories somewhere else, like you mentioned earlier on. And so we are men. So sometimes we fail to express ourselves because of fear of my story is going to be exposed. Sometimes because also of the fake life that we live on social media. So Peter, tell me why on social media I'm exposing and showing myself. I have cars, I'm living so well, I'm on TikTok, I'm on holidays. So tell me why I'm exposing such kind of a life on social media, and then I come to you and tell you I don't have meal meal at home. You think you believe me? It will not. So fake life as well. So we must begin to live true and real life. It is only when people can see what you are going through on social media and in real life that they are able to help you. But sometimes it's difficult to help a fellow man because you look at this man, they have two different lives. On social media, they are bling bling, and then on the side they are coming to you that they don't have maybe they don't have a job. How do you expect people to help you? So now we must begin to have very honest conversations. Guys, I don't have anything. Is there any way you can help me? Is there any way you can provide for me? Is there any way you can give me a job? Is there any way you can just help me with something to start with? But sometimes it's difficult to help such people because what you see on social media today is different from what they're actually living. So really, I just want to say, let's begin to have very honest conversations. We must begin to express ourselves as we meet. It shouldn't just be about Manchester United. You know, when we started here, when I just arrived, we started talking about football. Where are we going to watch soccer today? Yes. And you don't know my problems right now. You understand? Yeah. So when we meet in bars, for example, there are people who go to bars, others go to church. It could be at church or wherever you meet from. In bars, you always find everyone is a big buyer, you know. But we can now begin to have very honest conversations there. Guys, things are not going on well with me. At church should be a point where people should reach fellowship and then speak to each other. Guys, things are not well at home. So let's begin to have very honest conversations and let's not begin to look down on each other.
Yeah, but I think since you bring in the aspect of the church, I think my cry has always been the church to also be practical.
Yes.
Because sometimes you find that you are going through this challenge, right?
Yes.
You don't have a job and you go to church and then the only thing that you get is prayer.
Yes.
So somebody just prays for you and then you go back home you continue in that state. And I feel like even Jesus showed us a very good example when it comes to practicality. And that was a time, I don't know the scripture, can help me, but there was a time he preached, he saved the people, and the people were hungry. It was a bunch of people.
Yes.
And what did he do when the people were hungry? He did not lay a hand on them to pray for them so that their bellies could be filled.
The disciples actually said, let them go now, release them.
Okay. But so he said, these people are hungry, let's feed them, and provided fish and bread. So I think we need to be more practical and see about, as a church, how do we meet some of those needs for people? How do we help them? How do we talk about being practical and also encouraging entrepreneurship? Because, a lot of people, like you said in your preamble, just feel like, okay, I went to school, I have these papers, and so I have to get a job. And so there's no job, I can't do anything. So let's talk about the importance of side hustles.
Okay, side hustles. Maybe before we can talk about side hustles, let me just make a comment as well on what you said. It's not only the church. No. Of course, the church should do that. But for me, it's about society. Because the church is born from society. It is society that goes to the church. So we should not only limit it to say, let's do these things at church. Let's do these things even outside church as we meet as human beings, because we are humans. When you see someone struggling, try to help them, and also that. Talking about side hustle, I never want to call it side hustle. Yeah, because when you say side hustle, For me, anything that brings you income may not really be side hustle. Trust me.
Yeah.
I don't treat anything that brings me income as side hustle. That is a hustle.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a hustle for me because when you say side hustle, there's this connotation of wanting to demean it.
Yeah, you
like
don't pay so much attention.
Yeah, you don't pay so much attention. But for me, I think my theme of life has always been Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 10 that says, whatsoever your hand findeth to do, do it with all your might and power. So it doesn't say, oh, fine, side hustles, this. No, whatsoever your hand. So even the things that people call side hustles, for me, they are whatsoever your hands finds to do. Now, what do I mean by that? You must commit yourself to such things. It's only when you commit to something that it can grow. So talking about, but let me just call it side hustle as you are putting it. Yeah. Side hustles are very important, or hustles are very important. You might be having employment, that's formal employment, white collar jobs or whatever you are doing. Remember, earlier on I told you I know of a certain medical doctor, very committed medical doctor, but they are not satisfied with whatever they get. So they have this so-called side hustle, they bake. And these days I think things have become skills have become very common these days. Like it's easy now to do marketing. People are venturing into cosmetics. People are venturing into hairdressing. People are venturing into selling different things, baking. And I think baking is a skill that can never have market saturation. Why? Because people have parties almost every day. People have birthdays every day. So baking is not something that you can say, fine, I think there's too much people doing it. Women these days, cosmetics and makeups, you can't say there's too many people that are doing makeup. You can now venture into those things. So what am I trying to say there? What I'm trying to say is we shouldn't be comfortable with where we are. If you're in formal employment, don't be comfortable. Don't be comfortable with what you do. Have what you're calling the side hustles. But like I mentioned, I don't want to call them side hustles because if you call them side hustles, you will not give them time. Have an extra source of income. I think that is what I would call it. And that extra source of income, you shouldn't demean it. And it's very important that we should not only have one stream of income. Today, I always say, I think we've seen also that USAID, I think at some point when they cut their funding in Zambia, we saw a lot of people going on the job market, being jobless. That also may be as a result of not having what you term the side hustle, and a lot of people are not ready to receive maybe employment termination yet. Why? Because they have nothing they can do besides what they do. And it is only people who have been in situations where you are working, but you understand that this job may not last forever. So the point I'm just trying to say is it's very important for us to begin to venture into other things. We shouldn't feel so comfortable to do what we do as our main jobs. Now, I'll categorize that as the white collar jobs. Let's not be comfortable in that. Each and every person can learn a skill. Like I mentioned, we can bake, we can do cosmetics, we can sell phones, we can do whatever it is. Let's have extra incomes where it's very easy for us to transition from, for example, if you lose your job today, it will be easy for you to transition from that job into that side business or side hustle, as you are terming it, that you were doing. When you have a side hustle, it's easy for you to transition from, for example, you lose your job, and then you easily transition from your job that you lost into that particular side hustle. And like I mentioned, that now reduces on mental stress. So those side hustles, like we are saying, they are very important because they are an income that I would call a backup. And for a man, and let me just emphasize, for a man, it's actually dangerous to have one source of income. Because today, tell me why I'll lose everything and what am I going to lean on? My family, you can only maybe understand me for a week, and we only have a week or even a month. After that, it's like that saying where people say being an orphan ends at a certain point. So even being jobless at a man would end at a certain point. For example, you cannot continue to call yourself jobless 6 months down the line and all that. So side hustles are very important, like you mentioned, because in case of an event where things don't go as planned with one source of income, you transition into another and just continue life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Muyaloka. It's been an informative discussion. Yeah, but all things must come to an end.
Oh no,
That's what they say.
I was enjoying talking. I love to talk, so I thought we were going to talk the whole day.
Yeah. Anyways, hopefully we can always have you on the podcast, because I think there's a lot of wisdom that we can tap into.
Yeah, sure.
So this is part of the community for men to have such conversations, and I'm glad that you came through for this invitation.
Excellent.
Yeah. So before I let you go, if there are people who are watching us right now and they would want to get in touch with you, how can they reach out to you?
Well, reaching out to me, I think you can always reach out to me on my number. I don't know, am I allowed to mention my number on this podcast?
We don't want to put you in problems.
Yeah, so
give social media handles if you're on social media. LinkedIn,
social
Facebook,
media
Instagram.
handles. I'm not on Facebook for now, but I think I'm not on Facebook for now, but LinkedIn. People can always LinkedIn. I think I'm there. Then also people can just reach me through our company website. We have a company website actually. So you just maybe just go on the internet and maybe just Google there, Magnet Consultants Limited. I think it will come. So you will see all our details there and everything else. Yeah, so
LinkedIn?
People can. Sorry?
And LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, it's Muyaloka David. Yeah, those are my names. I'm not on Facebook in the meantime.
Okay.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming through. And to our viewers, thank you for joining this episode of the Crisis of Manhood podcast. We have been talking about dealing with joblessness. And if this information has been very helpful to you, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also share to anyone in your circles that may be able to benefit from this conversation. Otherwise, it's signing out, and bye for now.
I keep it inside of me. Yeah, I keep it inside. It's killing the man, it's killing the man in me. Yeah, it's killing the man. Keep it inside, I keep it inside of me.